There are moments when life stands still, moments when the world becomes silent, and all that is left is the sound of your own heart breaking. This story begins on one of those nights. It was a cold evening in a small town. Outside, the rain fell softly against the windows of a hospital. The smell of disinfectant filled the air, and the sound of footsteps echoed down the long hallway. Inside one small room, a young mother named Sarah stood beside her newborn baby. Her child was only 3 days old. His name was Eli. His skin was pale and his tiny chest barely moved. Machines surrounded the bed, beeping rhythmically. The nurses moved quickly, whispering to each other. Sarah watched every second, praying silently, "Please, God, not my baby." Then suddenly the sound stopped. The monitors went silent. A nurse shouted, "He is not breathing." Sarah froze. Her hands trembled as doctors rushed into the room. They began pressing on the baby's chest. One of them called for oxygen. Another shouted for the emergency team. Minutes passed. The air was heavy. Then, after one final attempt, the doctor stopped. He looked at the clock on the wall. Then he turned to Sarah. His voice was soft but heavy. He said, "We are so sorry. We did everything we could." Sarah's legs gave way. She fell to her knees beside the hospital bed. Her tears fell onto the cold floor. She whispered, "No, please, God, not him. Please, not my son." The nurse gently covered the baby with a white sheet. The doctor walked out, leaving her alone in the quiet room. The machines were still. The lights flickered softly. Everything seemed lifeless. Sarah sat there for a long time, unable to move. Her hands rested on the small blanket. Her heart was broken, but in that moment of silence, something stirred inside her. A voice whispered in her heart, "Pray." She remembered a verse her grandmother once told her. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." That verse lit a small spark in her soul. Sarah wiped her tears. She looked at her baby one last time and said quietly, "God, you gave him to me. I will not let him go without asking you first." She took a deep breath and began to pray. Her voice trembled, but she kept going. "Lord, you gave life to Lazarus when he was dead. You breathed life into Adam from the dust. You have power over death and life. Please, God, breathe into my baby again." Her words filled the room. Nurses outside heard her praying. Some wept silently. Others shook their heads, believing it was only a mother in grief. But Sarah refused to stop. She placed her hand gently on her baby's chest and continued, "God, you said nothing is impossible for you. Let my child live again. Let him breathe." Minutes passed. The room was still. Then a sound broke the silence, a faint gasp. The nurse's eyes widened. She ran forward and lifted the sheet. The baby's chest moved again. Another breath, then another. She shouted, "Doctor, come quickly." The doctor rushed back into the room. He looked at the baby, his eyes wide with disbelief. The monitor beeped once, then twice. The baby's heart was beating again. The doctor whispered, "This cannot be." Sarah cried out, "Thank you, Jesus, thank you." Her voice echoed through the hallway. The nurses began to cry too. The baby moved his tiny fingers. His face turned pink again. The doctor looked at Sarah and said, "Your baby is alive." Sarah held him tightly. "You do not have to explain it," she said softly. God did it. The entire hospital stood in silence. They had just witnessed a miracle. Hours later, Sarah sat in a recovery room holding Eli close to her chest. His heartbeat was strong and steady. Nurses came in and out, each one quietly whispering, "He should not be alive." One of them said, "I have worked here for 15 years. I have never seen anything like this." Sarah smiled through her tears and said, "That is because you have just seen God do what man cannot." The doctor ran test after test. They checked Eli's brain, his heart, his oxygen levels. Everything was perfect. No damage, no explanation. Finally, the doctor said, "I do not have the words. There is no medical reason for this." Sarah looked at him and said, "It is simple. God heard my prayer. Word spread across the hospital. People came to see the baby who had come back to life. Some came with curiosity. Some came with tears in their eyes. Others came to ask Sarah to pray for their own families. Sarah told everyone, "Do not look at me, look to God. He did this." She began to share her story wherever she could, in churches, schools, and hospitals. Her voice always trembled when she told the part where she heard her baby breathe again. She said, "Faith does not make things easy. It makes them possible." And she always read the same verse. Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" Years passed. Eli grew strong and full of life. He loved running, climbing trees, and laughing with his friends. Every year on his birthday, Sarah took him back to the same hospital. She brought a cake for the nurses and doctors who had seen the miracle. The doctor who had once said, "There is nothing more we can do," would always smile when he saw Eli. He would shake his head and say, "Each time I see him, I remember that night. It changed everything I believe about life." Sarah would reply, "It changed me too. That night I learned that life belongs to God alone." When Eli turned 10 years old, he stood before his mother at church and said, "Mom, you told me God gave me life twice. I want to spend both lives serving Him." Tears filled Sarah's eyes. The congregation stood and clapped. That day Sarah knew her miracle was more than just a moment. It was a message that would travel far beyond that small hospital room. She looked at her son and said, "You are living proof that God still answers prayer. When the world says no hope, God whispers life. When doctors walk away, heaven steps in. When the heart breaks beyond repair, God reminds us that His hands still hold the power to restore." Sarah's story is not just about a baby. It is about faith that refuses to give up. It is about a mother who dared to believe in the impossible. For nothing is impossible with God. There are moments when our faith is tested, when prayers feel unanswered, and when the darkness feels endless. But in those moments, heaven is closer than we think. God still hears, God still moves, and God still brings life where there was once death. Sarah's prayer did not just bring her son back. It brought back her faith, her hope, and her understanding of God's power. Maybe you are listening right now and facing something that feels impossible. Maybe a dream has died. Maybe hope feels gone. Remember this story. The same God who heard Sarah's cry hears you too. He is the God of the living, the one who can turn tears into testimony. Do not stop praying. Do not stop believing, because sometimes one desperate prayer can change everything. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share it. Let faith rise again in someone else's life. And if you believe that miracles are still real, subscribe to this channel for more true stories that prove that God is still at work today.